Hi everyone, my name is Enrique, and if you're wondering why you're not watching me in video, it's because, well, considering the long extended hours that I have to take in order to edit videos and realizing that I don't have a lot of people helping me with those kind of videos, I realized that I needed to cut my losses and just focus just on my voice and what I'm going to review today and the picture that you're seeing right now, which is going to be the format that I'm going to use from now on until I get better equipment. But that's the way it is. That's the way I have to treat this situation because editing videos and without a premiere is going to be difficult. So for now, instead of focus on the production and everything, I'm going to focus a little bit, scale it down, and hopefully this will work. But what matters is not the quality of the video. I don't think it matters what kind of production I have. If I have flashy, production or wardrobe or anything like that. So for now, just try to get used to that. I hope you get used to it. And hopefully, I can take a page or two from guys like Good Mike Work when he had to begin the videos like this. This is honestly back to basics for me, in all honesty. But enough of that. It's time to talk about one of the movies that I wanted to talk about, but I never got the chance to do so, and that is Venom. In this case, the third movie, Venom The Last Dance. So, in order for me to talk about The Last Dance, I need to recap the previous movies that came before that movie. So, we need to talk about the first Venom movie that came out in 2018, and it was basically, let's just say, a corny adventure. It wasn't very connected to Spider-Man, to say the least, but it was enjoyable. And Tom Hardy's performance as both Eddie Brock and Venom was honestly pretty enjoyable. I do appreciate the special effects that they gave to Venom because honestly, he looks a lot better than Topher Grace. The only thing that I didn't like about that movie, it was the villain, which was Riot, aka Carlton Drake, played by Riz Ahmed. I mean, nothing wrong against the actor, but honestly, he was kind of forgettable, and his motivations were also forgettable as well. And in the end, he wasn't a threat. He wasn't going to be a challenge for Eddie Brock or either Venom. I will say Michelle Williams as Anne Wayne. It was good to see her, even though we never got to see the Anne Wayne from the comics. And that's the one thing. You have to be very forgiving about this movie because it kind of changes things, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan, that things that you will probably won't accept and probably won't think is going to be faithful to the source material. But that's the way it is. Regardless of your thoughts on the movie, it was a huge success. So much so that it opened the door for a sequel, which was, this case, Venom Let There Be Carnage, that came out in 2021. Now, this movie had a lot of hype after all. It had Woody Harrelson as Carnage, aka Cletus Cassidy. Now, if you know anything about Cletus Cassidy and Venom, you know that this is going to be, or this was going to be, one of the best stories that we ever got. But honestly, even though the sequel was good, it was also different from the source material. And in all honesty, it gave Cletus Cassidy a little bit of humanity. I mean, they gave him a girlfriend. And while I appreciate the humanity, it's kind of detached from the character. I mean, Cletus Cassidy is a psychopath. It's one of the reasons why the symbiote decided to choose him as a host. And in all honesty, it feels kind of disconnected. They're trying to do the whole Jekyll and Hyde thing, but at the very least, Woody Harrelson is still bringing his level of psychotic in this film. And it was also good to see Carnage on the big screen, even though it was for a short time. I will say that there was a lot of hilarious scenes. I mean, Mrs. Chang, I mean, Anne Wayne, and everyone else. It was good to see. It had great effects, and it tried to connect Spider-Man a little bit. So overall, even though it wasn't the greatest movie of all time, it was an acceptable sequel and also made a huge success. But for now, we need to talk about the third movie, and I think, in my opinion, is probably the worst one since it scales down a little bit and it gives us something that probably won't be as loved as the other two movies. So, without further ado, here's my review of Venom The Last Dance. So how does the movie start? Well, it starts out with Null, played by Andy Serkis, looking for the symbiote of Venom, in which he has the key to open the gates in order to transport himself or free himself from the prison that he is right now. And he's looking for the key that he has after he died. It was kind of convoluted, but if I understand correctly, when Eddie died in the first movie and Venom saved him, it opened the door or at least created a key for Null to go after the key in order to free himself from the prison that he's in. It's kind of convoluted, but basically Null is looking for a way out, and only Venom and Eddie Brock are standing in his way. So, where are Venom and Eddie Brock? Well, the last time we saw them, and by that I mean after we saw them in the post-credit scene of Spider-Man No Way Home, which I need to address this because they had two different scenes from that moment in which Eddie is talking to the bartender and then he gets back to his world. In the movie, it kind of just fades away like the all the other characters in No Way Home. But in this movie, he gets sucked out and then sucked in into this world, like in a weird, convoluted way. I don't understand why they just kept that scene and just keep it basic. Like, I'm in this world because of Spider Man, and now I'm back to my world. But nevertheless, Eddie comes back to his home. He's still stuck in Mexico. And he realizes that those creatures that Null sent are going after him and Venom. So for most of the movie is basically Venom and Eddie Brock not transforming into Venom because they will detect that key. It's kind of convoluted. Those creatures can sense the symbiote whenever they are shown on the outside, and the inside it's different. It's kind of weird. I mean, I you would think that those creatures will be able to sense the symbiotes even when they are not in the outside. I mean, what kind of convoluted plot convenience is that? But regardless of that, most of the movie is seeing Venom and Eddie Brock trying to free themselves from those creatures, going back to New York because even though they are wanted criminals, yet they think, it's the best idea they got. And no, before you ask, there's no cameo from Spider Man. In fact, all these movies are trying to build up from him meeting Spider-Man, and the actor Tom Hardy promised to meet Spider-Man in interviews, but no, we don't get to see him. Most of the movie is just him running around the desert. Another cigarette organization is looking for Eddie Brock. One of the soldiers from that organization is played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays Rex Strickland. Now, it's good to see Chiwetel Ejiofor back into a Marvel movie, but I was expecting him to be, Mordo. You remember him? The guy from the villain, or at the very least, he was going to be the villain in Doctor Strange. Now he's playing a soldier called Rex Strickland. I know it's from the comics, but still, it's just not enough screen time for him, and they don't give him a lot of character in here. Okay, I shouldn't say that, but honestly, it's kind of forgettable. Another character that they brought from a Marvel movie is none other than Rhys Ifans, who, if you know him, he played the Lizard in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, and he came back as a voice as the Lizard in No Way Home, even though it was just a voice. But here he's playing a guy called, if I'm not mistaken correctly, he's playing a guy named Martin Moon. I mean, and he has a family, and everybody thought, okay, that's good, but is he the lizard? Is he another alternate dimension of the lizard? No, he's just playing another character without any rhyme or reason. There's no joke about him being a scientist. There's no, oh, he's actually Dr. Kirk Connors who hasn't transformed into the lizard or anything like that. Like, why was Rhys Ifans as this new character called Martin Moon? And him and his family going around the desert looking for Area 51 as a, and they don't have jobs or anything like that. Like, what the hell am I watching? And that's the biggest problem of this movie. It has a lot of potential. I mean, Eddie Brock and Venom going as fugitives. This should be something interesting, something deep. But instead, it's just the same old shtick that we have seen before, except without any of the other cast members. Sure, Tom Hardy is playing Venom, is always a delight, but where's Anne Wayne? Where's the her boyfriend doctor? Okay, I should address that Reed Scott, who played Dr. Dan Lewis, comes back in this movie, but as an anonymous person who runs the organization who's hunting down Venom. And I'm just saying to myself, okay, but where's the payoff? Like, they bring back some of the actors who play previous characters in previous movies, and then they just don't utilize them. I mean, that's the biggest drive about this movie, and it feels cheap in my opinion. I mean, you would think that after two successful movies that they would at the very least deliver on something big and epic. After all, you have Null, and Andy Serkis is playing Null. I should also mention that Andy Serkis was the director of the previous movie Venom Let There Be Carnage, so I would assume that he become a director in order to play Null, and that's good, but he doesn't do much in this movie. And honestly, they only talk about Null, but they don't. They're trying to build him up as a big bad, like the Thanos of the Spider-Man universe. But still, he doesn't do much. Only his tentacle creatures or whatever they are doing all the job. And honestly, we don't have a big bad in this movie. Unknown is in the shadows, but you would figure they will try to bring us another Marvel character that at the very least can be, you don't know, the memorable third and final boss of this movie. I mean, they're trying to build them up as this big bad guy or something like that, but no, hell, not even Chiwetel Ejiofor playing Rex Strickland is the bad guy. Hell, they don't even bring Stephen Graham, who plays Patrick Mulligan, the former detective from San Francisco, as the other guy, as the other symbiote. If you remember, he was infected by the symbiote in the movie, and he was called Toxin. And you will think, okay, the Patrick is looking for revenge against Eddie Brock for what happened in the last movie, and with the symbiote, you would think they will do more damage. But no, the symbiote that they put in Patrick Mulligan is actually a good guy. In fact, they build them up, the symbiotes, as good guys, as the creatures who just were escaping Null and trying their best to have normal lives. And I just saying to myself, don't you think that devalues the symbiote? Okay, look, I'm a Spider-Man fan, and while I'm not a big symbiote fan, I know that the symbiote has a purpose, which is bring the worst aspects of the human being's emotions and putting on display so they can become more crazy, more psychotic. And you would think that they will do that in this movie, but no. All the symbiotes that they come, they have special powers and they are good guys. And you will think, why? Why make them good guys? And that's another problem. I mean, they have all the symbiotes, they have creative symbiotes, all with special powers, different personalities, and they all just bland, you know? You would think with creatures with such crazy designs will have a lot more personality. And that's the problem. They don't give them personality. They just make them good guys. and just a little bit crazy, but not psychotic crazy, like they want to take over the world. And here's the thing, I play a game called Spider-Man Web of Shadows. It was one of the best video games I ever played because it played into the symbiote perspective, or at the very least into a perspective of what is a symbiote and what is his purpose, which is dominate an entire planet. I mean, after all, the symbiotes are there to save themselves. They need human and hosts in order to survive. And they need then to conquer an entire planet in order to feed themselves. In this movie, they don't do that. They just act as victims. And that's disappointing to me because honestly, you could have done something so memorable with the symbiote and you just don't do it. I talked about the symbiote so much that I forgot about the other characters. Well, there's not much to say. Juno Temple plays Dr. Teddy Payne. They gave her a backstory, a sad, tragic story about her losing her brother and losing an arm, but there is not much to say about her, and she's kind of forgettable. There's one character that does come back from the previous movies, and that is Peggy Lou as Mrs. Chen. And I gotta say, it's good to see Peggy Lou getting a lot of attention in these movies. She even appeared in Across the Spider Verse, so that's a good thing for her. But again, she just appears only once, and just it's hard to say. I mean, this movie has a lot of potential, but it feels cheap, and when it is not cheap, it feels lacking scale. All the movie is all about Eddie and Venom going around the desert, going about on Vegas, Area 51, but there is barely a conflict. And spoilers for those who hasn't seen the movie, but in this case, Venom sacrifices himself and takes all the creatures that were hunting him down into a bath of acid, and he sacrifices himself in order to save Eddie, and the Area 51 explodes, and everything is gone except for one symbiote that Teddy Payne gets, but that's neither here nor there. And it's honestly kind of forgettable if you think about it. There's one symbiote in the world, but it's not the one that we wanted to see, and that is painful. In the end, we see that Eddie Brock is pardoned for everything. He goes to New York. We don't see Spider Man or even a J. Jonah Jameson, which is kind of disappointing to say the least. And the movie ends. Oh, yeah, I forgot. Cristobal Fernandez, who was the bartender in the previous movie in No Way Home, appears, and he's just kind of there, and that's it. I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, when it comes to Venom movies, this one feels lacking scale. I don't know if they're ever going to pay it off the reveal of No being still alive or still around because he didn't do anything. Only his henchmen creatures, whatever they are, do all the job. And he's just stuck there. I mean, if this is the Thanos of the Spider-Man universe, then they could have built him a lot better. Now, there have been talks of Spider-Man 4 in which they're going to involve Null, but unless those happen and unless Sony decides to give the opportunity for the MCU to do something with Null, something that they didn't do on their own, then okay, that's good, but in the end, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. And that's the one thing that disappoints me about this movie, as well as all the other Spider-Man Sony movies that they have developed for the past few years. And I'm not just talking about this one. I'm talking about Madam Web, Craven the Hunter, and other ones that I have forgot to see. Oh yeah, Morbius. That one, that was so disappointing. I already did a review of Morbius if you want to check that out. But needless to say, this was disappointing as well as all the other movies. You would think that with such a rich story and such a rich character story with Spider-Man and all the other characters, they will at least put the effort in to do something, but they don't. And that's the saddest thing. And there have been rumors that because of this and Craven the Hunter being box office bombs, that they are going to reconsider to sell their properties of Spider-Man to the Marvel. But I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen because after all, Spider-Man is their property and they won't give it up without a fight. So unless we hear the news, Sony sells Spider-Man back to Marvel, we don't know what's going to happen. And honestly, it's just the way that we have to deal with things. So I'm still looking forward for Spider-Man 4, whatever they put the new name. I don't think it's going to be with Home this time. After all, they have a trilogy with Home, but it's going to be different this time. Regardless, I hope we see another version of Venom that is actually faithful to the source material. I don't know if Tom Hardy is going to come back. I think for now, I think we need to scale it down the stories. There's going to be a new cartoon series called Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I don't think it's connected to the MCU, but it's going to be referenced a lot, and hopefully it's good. And hopefully I can talk about it next time, okay? But I don't know. What do you guys think? Am I being too unfair about this movie? Am I being too biased, or do you think this movie was bad? Well, regardless, let me know in the comment section. Hopefully, this new format can help me make more videos, and hopefully, whenever I get more, well, more income and more personal staff, I can make more expensive videos, but for now I'm just gonna keep it simple because honestly it's better to keep it simple and try not to, overwork yourself. So regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you wanna subscribe, you're free to do so. So for now, I hope to see you next time, and hopefully I'll see you soon.